In the summer of 1990, 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett became the victim of kidnapping and assault by yet another deranged predator. After going through the twisted plays of her abductor, she was wounded and left for dead. However, this story has an unlikely twist that her abuser definitely didn't see coming. So, who exactly was Jennifer Schuett? What horrors did she have to endure? Who was the person that put her through that hell? And what has happened since that fateful night? Watch till the end to find out.
I wanted to help because I was the only living witness.
In the small town of Dickinson, Texas, Jennifer Schuett lived with her mother, Ellen, on the ground floor of a small apartment in a shady neighborhood. Born in May of 1982, Jennifer lived a peaceful life. Everything might not have been perfect for them, but it was enough and they lived happily and content. That was until Jennifer, then 8 years old, was taken from her room in the dead of night, destroying what joy Ellen might have had. On the night of August 9th, 1990, Ellen walked into Jennifer's room only to find it empty and the window leading to the parking lot, which she usually kept closed, was wide open. At first, she must have thought Jennifer was playing some kind of prank. She searched the house and called out for her daughter like anybody else in the same situation would react. But after minutes of searching and deafening silence, the gravity of the situation dawned on her. Her daughter was gone. The next thing Ellen did was call the police.
Sometime early Friday morning, 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett was abducted from her apartment bedroom.
Jennifer's mother entered the bedroom and found the bedroom window open and her daughter gone.
She had no idea that her daughter had not only been violently taken from her room, but also brutally injured and left for dead. The police were swift to arrive. However, their initial theory after hearing Ellen's statement was incorrect. At first, they believed Jennifer had run away, but that didn't seem right. She was a child and highly dependent on a family she loved dearly. There was nothing in her life that suggested that she had left on her own, and the open window was highly suspicious. The idea that she may have been a runaway child was quickly dispelled as the obvious evidence all pointed to a kidnapping. As hours began to pass, the fear of never being able to see her daughter again began to set in. Was Jennifer dead? Who had taken her? What had they done to her? With no new leads from the police, tensions only rose and deep fears began to take root. That was until 6:30 p.m. on the same day when a harrowing discovery was made. Some kids in the area were playing in a field when they tripped over the body of a little girl. They immediately hurried to tell their parents, who wasted no time in calling the police. With 2 calls about a young girl coming to them from the same area on the same day, they rightly suspected that it was Jennifer. They rushed to the scene with paramedics, hoping she could be saved, but ultimately believing they were going to retrieve a body. Thankfully, while arriving at the scene, they confirmed Jennifer was still alive but in dire condition. Her throat was cut from ear to ear, and there were deep lacerations all over her body. Her chances of surviving seemed minimal, and, from the wounds alone, it's clear how grotesque and wicked the person who inflicted them is.
Jennifer's condition was grave. Her throat had been cut from ear to ear.
The police dispatched a life flight helicopter and everyone waited with bated breath. It was a race against time. Would Jennifer die, or would she live to explain what happened to her and bring her abuser to justice?
As she's airlifted, I'm thinking that we're obviously going to have a murder case.
Unsurprisingly, her wounds looked fatal and everyone feared they would have a murder case on their hands. Jennifer was in such bad shape her mother wasn't allowed to see her. The entire ordeal left everyone reeling through a flood of different emotions, from relief to fear. Others felt hopeless. With injuries like that, was it even possible that Jennifer would survive? Her assailant definitely hadn't intended for that to be the case. Luckily, Jennifer's assailant had missed all the major arteries in her neck and she was successfully pulled back from the brink of death. When Jennifer became conscious after the surgery, her attitude changed, which is expected for anyone who went through the kind of trauma she went through and lived through, more so for a child. After the news of her awakening spread, the Dickinson Police Department dispatched a squad with the sole intent of protecting her. They feared that her attacker would come back to finish the job. Despite her physical healing looking up, it was clear that Jennifer was mentally and emotionally scarred. She was extremely terrified of all the male doctors, staff, and most especially, the male police officers. Getting information from Jennifer wasn't easy. She couldn't speak and she was frightened of the police. The only way the police were able to get Jennifer's statement was by handing her a notebook and some pens. They asked her to answer the questions in writing. She was quite intelligent for her age and extremely brave to be able to relive her trauma through writing. She described what happened in enough detail and, with her writings and clues from the investigation, the police could more or less piece together in horrific detail what exactly happened to Jennifer. After falling asleep that night, Jennifer woke up being carried by a complete stranger. He was running with her down the sidewalk, and any time she tried to scream, he would cover her nose and mouth with his hands. He told her that he was a police officer and that she needed to calm down. Then he put her in his car and he held her on his lap as he drove away. Jennifer knew something was wrong. She knew the police were good guys, but she also knew never to trust strangers.
As a child, I wanted to believe him, but the part of me that was scared of the dark knew that there was something really wrong here.
The police finally understood why she didn't trust the males around her, especially the male police officers.
I started to realize that I had actually been kidnapped. I was very afraid of what would happen next.
To reduce her panic and perhaps make this lie seem authentic, he drove to one of the local elementary schools and told her they'd wait there for her mom to come pick her up. He began smoking, drinking, and offering her candies while they waited for a mother that was never on her way. He then drove out of town and pulled up to a field, and there a frightened Jennifer started asking questions.
I remember him saying, "Well, your mom's not coming," and starting up the car.
A very curious 8-year-old. I was kind of interrogating him. I was wanting him to prove to me that he was a police officer. I wanted to know, where's your gun? Where's your badge?
He never answered her questions. Instead, he did unspeakable things to the 8-year-old Jennifer. She passed out only to wake up to find herself being dragged by her ankle in the middle of a field. Although she was battered and bruised, Jennifer did the best and simplest thing to do in that situation that even grown adults might not think to do. She played dead. Thinking she was way too weak and injured to survive, he dropped her legs and left her for dead in the field on a nest of fire ants. As the sun was coming up, Jennifer heard the sound of children playing and dogs barking around in the field. She tried to scream for help, but she couldn't.
I realized I couldn't scream. I had just enough strength to throw my right hand on top of my neck, and I looked at my hand and it was full of...
At this point, she could barely stay conscious, but the fire ants kept biting her and jolting her awake. As she lay there, Jennifer had one thought on her mind. She had to survive this, and she would catch the man who hurt her.
I remember saying that he looked greasy and like he may have had a scar or something on his face. I remember writing down that there were beer cans in the car and the brand of cigarettes that he had. Just every little detail that I could remember, everything that I thought would help in finding him.
Through her little investigation by asking him questions in the car, Jennifer managed to get his name. Using the information she gave, a sketch artist produced a profile of her assailant. However, describing a person's face accurately through writing proved difficult for her, and although a sketch was produced and released, 0 suspects were found. It was frustrating that even with all the details she gave, a suspect still couldn't be found. She would get angry about this and her inability to speak her mind, but that never stopped her from trying. She would have mute rages, and during one of her rages, she got yet another miracle. She was able to make small sounds. Doctors were shocked. They never expected her voice to recover, and with good reason, too. After all, her vocal cords were cut in half, but somehow they started healing. Weeks after that, Jennifer was discharged from the hospital. She went back home and even returned to school the next year. But living a normal life with all her mental and physical scars was not easy. The entire town of Dickinson was on edge because the perpetrator was still at large. If it could happen once, it could happen again. Police patrols around town and around schoolyards and even classrooms became the new norm in Dickinson. As time went by, the case slowly went cold. New leads became non-existent and new cops came and went. Still, Jennifer refused to give up. She ended up having to wait 18 years with no sign of progress on her case until she got a call from a new detective, Tim Cromie. Jennifer met up with him, and for the first time in years, he gave her hope that this case would be solved.
Sitting down with Jennifer for the first time, I told her, I said, Jennifer, I will do whatever I can do in my power till the end of my career to get you the answers that you need for this case.
And that simple sentence changed my life. I felt like he was as dedicated to the solving of my case as I was.
It was a unique aspect of having Jennifer there to help with certain aspects of the case that otherwise we had never known.
He contacted the FBI and asked them to analyze the pieces of clothing found in the field Jennifer was found in. The more time that passed, the harder it became to crack the case, but the only advantage Jennifer had was the advancement of technology in the DNA field in the last 18 years.
As time went on, and it took so long, my optimism faded. If we didn't get a DNA hit, I wondered if we were ever going to solve this case.
However, it took a whole nother year before the results finally came in.
It was 2:30 in the morning. My phone rings, and it's the DNA lab. The DNA examiner told me we got a hit.
On September 22, 2009, the FBI matched the DNA to Dennis Earl Bradford.
Who? Who is that? We never saw that name in a report. When Tim and I made the connection back to the notes that Jennifer wrote saying his name was Dennis. Jennifer was 8 years old, on pain medication, couldn't speak, and then all these years later, for that to actually be the fact. At that point, it was monumental that this girl was so accurate.
39-year-old man from Arkansas with a horrible track record. He was released from jail just months after Jennifer's abduction after he was arrested for attempt to assault a woman in a bar. 7 years after the first abduction, he went for another woman, choked her, and pulled a knife to her throat similar to what he did to Jennifer. His data was put into the national database and matched with DNA found on the clothes. They also received a copy of his driver's license from 1990, and the sketch from Jennifer's description was almost a perfect portrait. The police wasted no time and immediately got an arrest warrant and arrested Dennis Bradford. After the arrest, the good news was relayed to his victim, Jennifer.
No, why? No, why? Many times, and I never had a guts.
When Bradford heard Jennifer was still alive, he dared to start crying.
She's alive. She's alive. She's alive. Don't try to shoot right now.
Once he was arrested, Renison and Cromie were able to get him to confess to the abduction, and only a few months before the trial was to begin, Schuett received what she called the worst phone call of her life. Bradford had killed himself. Although this case didn't end with Jennifer getting the justice she rightly deserved, she has since gotten married and had kids. Jennifer has also been using her story to help other survivors. She travels the country to share her experience and is outspoken about what happened to her. It was a disturbing case that only took one depraved stranger, a window, and an 8-year-old girl. Thankfully, the nightmare didn't end with Jennifer's death, but the next stranger might not have been so lucky.